What I would like to cover here is a bit project planning and controlling. Okay, don't expect that we're talking about Hermes and all sorts of cool tools here. It's simply like a checklist thing we see in a lot of projects, things which go wrong. I usually am called when a project went wrong. So, and I'm dreaming of getting one from scratch, you know, where we can do. We had one for General Motors, and I'm talking a little bit about that. My name is Giancarlo Berner, just in case I know a lot of you. We already from drinking yesterday. So let me just get into it here. A little bit of the overview. It's we're talking about large-scale projects, so I'm not talking about the small things. The small things usually work well. We don't have a lot of worries. Then we have something lessons learned. Believe me, I burned my fingers too. My first project, I was 21. I'm not going to tell you how many years ago, but it was a long time ago, and I thought, you know, me, young, I know everything. Forget it. Okay, it really went wrong. A little bit about organizations and project milestones, because keep in mind we have JSR 170 technology. We can do a lot of things differently than you do it in the classic way with databases. We're talking a little bit of on resources and roles. Plus, one thing I like to cover too is what we tried out about a year ago with global integration and how we can save a lot of money and speed a lot on development just by reorganizing some things. Okay. A little bit, we're going to look into the project scope, because that's one thing I'm sure all of you are fighting in every project, that you have no time and you have no budget, but they want a Maserati or a Ferrari. So one thing to look at. A little bit about project intelligence. I see a lot of project managers, they are frustrated after the first 2 weeks because they're doing too much, a typical thing there, and a little bit more on resources and equipment. I like to start with one of the most stupidest questions you can have. What is a web project? Now you're going to ask yourself, why the heck is he asking that? It's just to give us a little bit the scope of what we're talking about here. Usually you're talking to business people, you're talking to developers. They finally bought the Magnolia license, so you have 15 resources lined up. They're all ready to work, but you got nothing for them to work yet. So we're talking about the scope of a project. What factors define a web project? Because there's some limitations. You go into some design things. What belongs to a web project? When do we talk about the project failure? I never heard about a project manager saying, no, we don't have it under control. If you have progress meetings, everything is perfect until the deadline approaches. That's when you have management by exception. What could be the reasons for project failures? It's amazing the mistakes we are making. You know, simple things. A lot of them have a high education, MBA and everything, and still we do some stupid mistakes. And of course, one thing, project objectives is also a little bit of a marketing thing, and we have to cover that. I like to point this out here. A project manager, I'm seeing very interesting project managers. I was on a Nokia project. That guy came from the production things. So he was a project manager in building phones, and they said, he's a cool guy, let's place him into the Engage web project. Okay. I also can tell you it was a disaster for that guy. Okay. One thing which is underestimated in most projects I ended up in is the scope of the web project. We define it with the amount of websites, web pages. Now, you don't really know what you're going to develop because you don't even know the requirements yet, but that is somewhere where you have to be flexible. Complexity of functionality, I'm quite sure we heard with Fabrizio, with a complex, simple media module, you solve a lot of things. It can be very complex, but it can be a pure newspaper design. Volume and traffic. one thing I like to know in advance, but it's very hard to estimate because you're doing a new project. They will, of course, marketing wants to have a huge success. They will tell you we will have 3 million hits per day. Okay, and so you're going to size your hardware accordingly, and then you have to cut down the budget because they will cut down on the development and not on the hardware. Then the amount of different designs. It's very interesting when you let a creative team do what they want. You're going to get very exciting things. It will take them 10 times longer than you planned, but it will be very exciting. So here too, you have to check on that. Performance requirements. We want flash, everything flash, but the load time is 0.7 seconds. So, things like that. And of course, time and budget. So, a project manager faces all sorts of different challenges. I'm sure, who did project management? I'm sure. Okay. I think you start realizing what we're talking about. Okay. Something we have to also, as a project manager, understand, we have technical objectives. So we need award-winning designs, we need state-of-the-art technology. Okay, I'm a project manager, I'm not a designer. I'm a project manager, I'm not the sysadmin, technical guy. Then we have monetary objectives. That's the hardest part, usually. That's dealing with we call it the business sponsors. Okay, so one goal I usually have in a project is to focus on maintenance, keep maintenance low, scalability. These who dealt with scalability in Magnolia or repository technology, it's beautiful. I can start with a phase and just add the second phase to it. It's not a classical database design, wait until they're done, and then I start front end, and then I go back to database design. It's 100% pure scalability. Plan on that. And I try to keep short development cycles. I don't know if it's maybe just me, but I simply can't manage a huge development phase, 3 months, 40 people doing all the same thing. You never really know where you are. Break it down into small cycles. Magnolia allows you to do that. Okay. Marketing objectives. One of the cool things, marketing explains you what they want. You develop something, and then you sort of find out that you didn't really hit the marketing goals, but you have a beautiful technology. Nissan, one good example, they won the prize in design. So what we did, we just changed the marketing objectives to a fancy website. So everything fit together. But basically they wanted to help selling cars. So this here is the scary part. If you take a large-scale project, I try to break it down into the different roles project management has to cover. Okay. So starting with the top, I like to have a steering committee. The reason is I get often confronted by marketing. Marketing doesn't really care about the project until they're really into it, when it gets to their responsibility. So they start telling you, we need to do this, we need to do that. And then they start thinking, the more you grow into it, and they say, I forgot, we need this here and we need that. But you're already in the middle of your big thing. So get them here, because you will need them to sign off. I'm going to show you some documents we produce to sign off. So we call that the steering committee. Don't be afraid of your boss and of the business guys and so on. Get them into it. I'm surprised how many big projects, marketing or business people are not even involved. Then one thing I tried out once, because when we get into Magnolia, we call it state-of-the-art technology. We get the best designers. Okay, it's sometimes so modern that they don't understand what the heck are they doing. Okay. On the other hand, you might have a lot of API development before you even start showing the first landing page. So I have what I call public relations. That's a person who does nothing else than document what we are doing in a way that they understand it. Another thing too, if you have a large project like for Nissan or Nokia, why not tell the world out there that we're working on it? I mean, Nissan, you could say there are 40 new people hired in that project. We're doing something for the community. Why not sell this thing? It's marketing. Okay. In one, for a construction company, they even made panels where they showed the steps of the development of the project. Who does governmental thing? The government likes to spend the money, but the people don't want the government to spend the money. So they have the same thing. They have to sort of create excitement. If you come down to the roles, okay, it's nothing new, but it just shows the challenge a project manager has. Okay, we have project administration, Q&A, okay, quality control, quality assessment. Then we have the creative and design team. They're usually not manageable. Those are artists. I had to deal once. I will never do it again. We have the system admin people. Those are the guys you only reach at 2 o'clock in the morning. Then we have us, development, production, and testing. You know, when your deadline approaches, you sort of make a shortcut in testing, and you get the big surprise when you develop and when you deploy. And training, education, I want to point out a bit later too. We create a lot of excitement for authors, so they use this thing. If the authors are involved and they create good content, it's a big thing too. Okay, so you see here, just from a project perspective, the manager has to deal with a lot of wild groups, and each one to be doing their own way of the project. Okay, so what we call here, we call them sort of functional leaders or functional project managers too. Okay, again, we're talking about large-scale projects. So, what are reasons for project failures? Too little time and too little budget. I think that's there's no project where you have enough money to spend. Okay. Marketing or business, they tell you, you know, we want a Ferrari, but they say, what is the big difference between a Smart and a Ferrari? They have a steering wheel, 4 wheels, you know, a little bit more engine. Why is it so much more expensive? Okay, that's one thing you have to close down here. Projects are underestimated. That's the one thing I'm surprised. I mean, if you look at the slide before, if you just look, you will say, why do I need all these people? Okay, underestimation. Of course, you can do shortcuts. Skill level of resources. It's, well, now talking more from the States, it's surprising sometimes what kind of resources they line up. Keep in mind, often they're already in 15 other projects, so they pick up the resource and say, we got a new project. Now, if I'm on a project and I have to give off 1 or 2 resources, I definitely won't give off my best people. So do some assessment. Requirements, something everybody hates, and I like them because then I can delegate. Missing communication. Everybody talks. We have 25 meetings for nothing, and then suddenly it tapers down to nada. No one is talking with each other. The creative team, they will sit back in their cubicles and come up with the craziest designs, and sort of manager will pull it together. The expectations don't match the results. Also, quite often, they describe an orange. No, they describe a clementine, but they expect the orange. And one thing I really had to learn the hard way is when a project manager works on the project. I just came off Johnson & Johnson, big, beautiful company in freaking cold New Jersey or Philadelphia. Okay, it's somewhere around there, Titusville out in the Pampas. Okay, there are 2 project managers which were coding. Okay, you can imagine what happened. I think they're still working on that project. So, if we come down now, we see that, okay, the scope, you can, of course, enlarge and it can be big. But if you come down and you decide, you look at project management, and I ask you, what is the difference between the president of France, the president of a creative company, and you as the project manager?
That's what I see.
Huh?
Why?
The wife, okay, the women. Yeah, that's actually a good answer. I never considered that. See, all manage projects, okay? All have a project scope. The president needs to govern country. The company CEO, like Pascal, they have to grow in size. And then all have time budget constraints. They all are crying they have no money. And all have resources, good ones, bad ones. All have what we call equipment. And all have communication lines. So what is the difference? Okay, not all have the same salary.
Project manager earns more.
Yeah, hopefully. I like to call project management also something like very experience-based. So it's like, I like to use the term chess game, where you can learn the rules in 30 minutes. But if you want to beat the world champion, you better work on that. And that means you have to train, you have to learn, you have to grow into it. So I tried to define that a few years ago, that project management is the ability to manage and guide resources and equipment. You don't work on the project. And of course, produce and deliver all the requirements within a given time and budget. I also changed they ask me how much will it cost. I prefer going the other way and say, what are you ready, what is your budget? And then we build up the project according to the budget. It doesn't work quite often because they want to hear it from me, but it's sort of a good start. Time, we're going to see how we can work on the time issue. Then what also, I also had to learn the hard way. And I like to use this grid because I read it in Churchill's biography for whatever stupid reason I got there. But he said that whatever is important and what is urgent, I think it was because of the cigars, but whatever is important and urgent, I do. What's not important but urgent, I delegate. What's urgent but not important, I delegate. Okay? And the rest is trash. Okay, imagine me, 25 years old, believing I'm the greatest project manager on earth. How can you trash 3/4 of what you're doing? Well, delegate it if it's important, delegate it if it's urgent, and if it's both, that's what you take care of. It will make your life a lot easier. Except you're usually not the one who defines what's urgent and important. So, what I do usually as initial tasks, I define the operational functions. So when I get a project, I define who's going to lead these operational functions. And let me see if this goes. What I'm talking about is this level. Okay. I'm not going to tell the designers what the heck they should be doing. I tell them what I want. Okay. Then one thing, when I know that, I recruit the operational function leaders. I don't know how to call them. That's how I just call them sort of team leaders. In France, they called them project managers. So I ended up having something like 9 or 10 project managers and only about 3 developers. So it's also nice how you call these things. One thing, concentrate on controlling and monitoring. Okay. Most of what they're doing, after 30 years, I gave up trying to understand what the heck they're doing. Modern technology, you don't want to be the bottleneck just because you don't understand it. Let them doing it, but monitor against the requirements. You are time and budget responsible, not they. So you have to stop them if they exceed things. Resources, I'm going to show you a way. I always wanted more resources on a project to be faster. I never got them because either the budget was wrong or they didn't understand why. Then project manager is the communication relay between the steering committee or the business guys and the operational function things. I usually don't let these operational function guys talk directly to whatever business people, because you need to also understand what the heck they're talking about, what the requirements are. And then all you concentrate on resource planning and assessment. It's amazing what kind of people you get on a project when they're lined up. and you're asking yourself, how in all the world did you get this JavaScript guy in the middle of the Java API development? Okay. There's something we call project intelligence. That means it's the combination of, I should maybe make this bold marked and red, of qualified resources with the state-of-the-art equipment. So it's a bit a combination of good skilled people, and that can be management level, development level, design level, and whatever. It's like playing soccer or NBA. If you want to be an NBA team, you just need on every position the right people, because the resources are responsible to develop and deploy the project. Okay. I spend a lot of time in when I'm allowed to acquire the resources. Okay, I spend a lot of time on assessment. It's just mission critical if you have to replace resources when you figure out 3 weeks later it's going the wrong way. Typical errors, of course, what always happens, too few resources. I'm going to show you why that happens. We have this workload in a short time. Okay, one trick is they just move the deadline another few months. Okay, doesn't always work, but that's one good excuse if you have a good friend in the steering committee. The skill level is often not compliant because you underestimate the project. Not you, usually the money owners, the sponsors, they underestimate the project. Number one issue. Then you have frustrated people. Keep in mind, in the States we have sort of what we call hire and fire. It can be that they just get, when you work 24 hours because you're missing again a stupid deadline, they just leave. Or you have offshore teams which change all the time. And you have weak leaders who just in progress meetings say everything is under control until it really starts showing up. Equipment usually is not so important at that moment. That's the development stuff, hardware. Magnolia, you see, you can load on a notebook and work with that. Okay. So, what do we do which is different? Nothing. It's sort of basically whatever you do typically in the projects. You define the business goals, gather the requirements. That's a cool thing. That usually takes time, which is not planned. When it takes them 3 years to decide on the project, and when they give you the green light, they want it done in 2 weeks. Planning, realistic planning. It's amazing what time. What we get sort of time planning situation where they say, okay, we need 2 weeks to do it, and I said 2 weeks? It will take me 2 months. So resources, you plan the resources. Development and deployment process. This is one thing we started about 4 years ago, and which it was a bit challenging, but it works. We call it parallel development. So for the project manager, it's very challenging to create phases. Okay, so you say that's phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you build 4 teams and you develop everything in parallel. Now in the classic database world, it's a huge challenge, but with the repository thing, it's quite cool because you just add whatever you add to it. You have API you can combine, it's all Java, and then the content, it's hierarchically organized, you just add a new tree. Testing, don't forget that. Low stress test. We do a lot user acceptance test even before we start development. I'm going to show you some documents we create. Education. That's usually you finally made it on the deadline, and then I go off for vacation. I don't care about the rest. And that's usually you come back after 3 months. There's no content. No one really knew how to do it. So important. Documentation. I'm sure if I ask who likes writing documentation, no one will ever move his hand. Okay. I'm going to show you one way we do it during the development too. And support, of course. Do you also do support? Who likes to do support? Okay. Hey, cool. You're in the wrong session here. So business requirements and functional specifications, two different things. Let the business people talk about their project. Don't let them tell you we want an orange. Let them get a bit more specific. Ask for the marketing goals. There's a reason to spend $1 million. Okay? Then don't let business people write functional specs. I get things like, they try to even work out the database table combination with constraints and weird things, and then I say, database? Does that still exist? And then that's how you make friends with your business sponsor. Design phase, usually they burn a lot more money than they should. Define functionality and component matrix. That's something which is a little bit unusual, and I'm going to show you a diagram out of a project we are doing. This is where I lose a lot of time doing it, but I gain a lot of time during the project. Time calculations. Usually there's a guy somewhere out there in the business department telling me you have 3 months time to do it, and that's how you're going to plan your time. No, do it realistically. Go back and say, look, we will need 6 months. We can cut down this here. We can do this later. Do that before you start. Don't tell them we'll figure a way out how to. It never worked for me. DDDs. These who know me on the projects, they hate me for that. Because I'm always screaming for a DDD. That's the detailed design documents. We break it down into a matrix with the functionality, with paragraphs, templates, maybe some API functionality. And then for each of this part, I write a DDD. Okay. Actually, the lead developer does that. So that's where we define the result with the mock-up, wireframe, maybe part of the page, plus also the functionality. How do we develop it? Will we use a database? If yes, what are the connections? Because this is what we delegate to the developers. And I'm going to show you an example. Time consuming, but I use it to sign off with the business people so they see exactly what we're going to develop. And if they come and say, no, we don't want that, I didn't move my whole team already. I say, okay, let's sit down and discuss it. That's where you can clean up a lot of things. Development, of course, that's 50,000 ways to do it. Testing, I guess that's typical in large-scale projects. Beautiful with Magnolia, you can start developing while you're working on specs because you can do parallel development and so on. Education, usually it's more party time. The whole purpose of education is creating excitement for the authors, for the people who are involved, because usually it's too expensive to let all the authors talk about what they want. So you just say, this is it, use it, and they go, I don't like it. So you just make a party, have some fun. That works. We did that for DHL. They invited all the authors worldwide to Brussels, and it was a huge event, about something like 80 people too. One big party, and they had content up within 2 months. Everything was there. Documentation, again, the thing you like most. General project failures, most important, is underestimated. Okay, I don't know how your experience, but I always run into this here, every time. Maybe it's just because I'm getting older, but that's really. Then too little or missing requirements. Number 2. The best case was I got a letter page, handwritten, with the requirements for about $200,000 project. Okay. He said, "Can you help us, do it?" I said, "No, I don't know what you want." Transition. It's surprising how many people know what a static website is. And when we are talking about dynamic page creation, it's scary. Sometimes you have all these people lined up, and they try to make a .html thing. They ask me, are we using front page or Beaver? And I said, just a moment. Are you sure you're in the right room here? Then resources, you get all the planning, and then you say, are these the 2 guys who are going to do this in 3 months? Okay. Then we have sometimes team leaders who don't even know what they're doing. Okay. Especially in the Magnolia world, where you want to use the repository benefits. And then they come with some kind of weird design stuff where you say, okay, let's talk about this. cool. I don't know if you did sale pitches where you did proof of concept, everything beautiful, and then they decide on a company, an agency, which doesn't even know what Magnolia is. Okay, that's here. You just have to wait until the whole thing goes down. They'll phone you again. That's actually how I make my money, and that's how I can charge a little bit more than you can. Okay, lack of communication. When things go wrong, they won't talk. I think that's a human nature thing. The same is with my wife too. What I usually do, I overestimate the project and then cut down. It's a lot easier. You come and say it's not 200, it's $500,000. They'll get a shock, wait 2 weeks, and then break it down to the 300,000. Get skilled resources and tell them that they cost something. I mean, we're dealing about cutting down $10 per hour on architects. Communication path is one important thing because if you have to manage them, you have to talk to them. Get the requirements you can get, and that is a long-term plan. That's usually one of the longer things. It takes months because these business people, they have a job to do. They're not going to sit there 24 hours and gather requirements for you. So that's where you have to get in. Let me get to this part again. Okay, we have you have to lead the operational functions. Don't tell them what to do. Let them tell you what they want to do. Deliverables. Compare your documents with the requirements. That's the funny thing too. You get fancy specs, and then you notice, but that doesn't match the business specs. I do it the old way, because my Microsoft project stuff people don't understand anymore. So I use simple Excel checklists. Plan for exceptions. Okay. That's okay. What I do, plan parallel flows. Okay, so group it down. Get yourself out of the way. You just monitor the whole thing. Don't even think of working on it. Okay. For that, you have lead resources. And I wanted to go to, define worst case scenarios. It's cool. You get something like a phone call, the hardware will be delivered 2 weeks later. Now you're sitting there with the whole thing. Plan for it. Management by exception. People get sick. They like to get sick. It depends if there's a soccer game on a Friday evening, they will be sick. So plan for them. B plans, because you keep in mind, you're not working on the project anymore. You have all the time to plan. And it looks good. The more paperwork you do, it looks like you're a good manager. Okay, what I wanted to get there, those are the requirements. The design phase, very critical. Often they start with the design, and then the design team is 3-4 months creating, burning money, doing whatever, and that all what you get is one big JPEG. Okay, so no assets. Ask for assets. We get things sometimes, background design things, 500 kilobytes. It's scary. So check on that, or just talk to the design team. Then we don't even get clickables, or we just get a CSS file no one understands, and then you just have to work with it. So ask for samples for the design. I like a style guide so that my developers just know what to do from the style point of view. Get the static assets, so give me the logos and the things, and in the beginning, not at the end. And okay, let's go to the lead architect. That's usually then the job I sort of get into. I plan the infrastructure. That's something you calculate according to requirements. And this here is the functionality and component matrix. I'm going to show you in a moment. And then the time calculations. The rest, I think, most of you already are doing successfully. Here, I just want to summarize what I'm doing with... I take the specs, and I really write down each and every piece of functionality in that specs. It's very time-consuming. I use Excel. but it's my control thing. I can just mark out whatever has been developed, and then I define, will I have a paragraph? Sometimes I see, okay, I have a lot of error handling, move it into its own paragraph or API. I put now S for servlet. It can be whatever. And that's how I make my development matrix. Okay. And that's also one reason why I can be very accurate with the time, because you know what you're doing. Okay, don't try to print it. It gets sometimes quite big. And here is how I calculate the time. Not sure if you can read it. I group it into phases, like the landing page or a home page or an API in I don't know, import tool or whatever. I have types of components I'm doing: templates, paragraphs, other. Then I give them a complexity. Let's say if I build a car configurator, it's a little bit more complex than displaying a news text. Okay. Then back here, I have some other meters, like I give them values in hours based on the skill level of the resources I have. So I get sometimes very interesting things that the template framework takes 3 weeks. Now people say, what the heck, 3 weeks just to build a little framework to create templates? Well, there is a reason why I do it, because I have my specs. Okay, so that gives you a total down here where you can go back to management and say, look, it will take for this part 272 hours. Do we do it in 1 resource, 2 resource, 3 resource, 5 resource? That's how you can then go back. And that's the realistic thing. Okay, now we have the marketing. You can't charge that. So you have to screw a bit. Then you have to just go back and say, what are we going to take off? I usually start with the expensive things and say, can we do that later? Or how are we going to deal this? Okay. The most important work of what the lead developers do is write the detailed design documents. And I will show you a sample we did for we use. That's where it's all basically already filled out. I just gathered together. That's sort of the starting part. What it is, it's a paragraph actually. Then some documents we are using for the coding styles. It's basically getting interesting here. We have mock-ups. We just add. We point out what we want to do. You define what you want to do. Will follow. That's a typical thing. TBD. Okay. A little bit of a description. This is just a sample. I had to take out a little bit of things because General Motors didn't like that so much. Then here I define author, user, experience, some pseudocode if you have something you know from the experience which worked, copy, paste it. Then I go down and say, what kind of resources will we create? We will have a dialogue, a paragraph, we will have a paragraph JSP, maybe you need more. Don't laugh. Down here I even define the properties for the dialogue or for the paragraph, because if they can't understand this, I don't need to do it. That's why I want to know that in advance. Then I usually list all the properties I have. Okay, it's an ugly design. It's not the design or format important. It's the content. So it's really ugly, but for my developers, they're used to me. Yeah, that's basically it. And here I point out which references I cover. That's more for me to controlling things. Sometimes I even have sections from the matrix. Okay. That's we do that for every paragraph, template, or whatever. I use this document. I give it over to I let it signed off by the business people so they see what we will develop. I of course I don't go one document by one. I grab a few together, go and have them sign off. If they come back and say, no, we wanted it different, fine, we do a change request, some more money to be made. Okay? I don't have to squeeze it into the existing development. Then one thing, okay, education, it's really basically create excitement, because you hopefully will create a system which is easy to use. Okay. And one thing so what we started, we took the offshore model, which for me never worked, and we created teams which work directly with the client. So when they say, you figure out it takes you 3 months to do something, and they want it in 2 months, you need more resources, but you don't get more budget, and you might not find the resources. So what we do here, we have people in Guatemala and in Mauritius for the Europeans, because it's time zone. So we do things like you get one team leader and 2 Java developers for something like $99 the hour. That's how I can blow up, use parallel development, and add these resources to it. At the Nissan project, we had five of these teams working parallel on things. It speeded up dramatically, because we missed the deadline. We would have missed it by months. So that's how we could catch up. We missed it by 2 days. So it worked out. It's off-site development. Okay, you don't want to fly them around, because that blows up the costs. Off-site development in Guatemala and Mauritius has, of course, a low cost value on the infrastructure. We get high-quality people. You will be surprised the quality of the universities. Let's say in Guatemala, if they do PHP, Java, and all that stuff. So if they fail the university tests, they have to repeat all the subjects again. So they are really well trained. And then, since we are the writers of the technical training material, we can of course train our own people. And our guys like to fly out to Guatemala or Mauritius to train them. So we get good quality. They are integrated into your team. So there's one in your team. There will be someone responsible to talk to the team leader to integrate. So they get the DDDs, they'll develop it, and they come back. This guy comes back with maybe 1 or 2 clarifying questions. And the DDD, which are signed off by business, is also the communication part of this side. Yeah, we did quite some big projects, which worked out this way. And let me ask you if there are any questions. No, huh? Usually that's all what you did already. It's a different way, maybe, giving you some new ideas. And well, good luck with your projects. Okay.